Welcome to Chester, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so I'm laughing, man, because it's something funny that I'm gonna say coming up. I'll laugh after I say it, so you'll know when it comes up. But anyway, welcome to Chess, ladies and gentlemen. So I do have. I just figured for whatever reason, I'm just gonna go back and find Wesley So's first game against pretty much like all the main name people. So going through the history, starting in 2006, 05, 06 ish. I did find the Surigaonon game, which I recorded. And now this is Wesley So versus Anish Giri. And this is the first time that they met. And it is at Wijk Aan Zee, Tata Steel in 2009. So, you know, way back in the day. And as you guys know, for anybody who's really new to my channel, Wesley So does represent the United States now since 2014. So you always see me put the American flag with the little bitty Philippines flag down there next to his name on the thumbnail and in the layout here. But before 2014, Wesley So was living and playing in the Philippines. So that's why you see a Philippines flag now. I try to get like the best pictures I can find. It is kind of hard sometimes to find like young pictures of some of these players. So it's really nice when you get a picture at all. So this is the picture that I got here was from 2014. So as you notice, Wesley So does have this little Philippines flag next to him playing in the picture. But for all of my people in the Philippines, I will say, maligayang pagdating sa mga chess, ladies and gentlemen. Mabuhay, kumusta na aking makaibigan? Masaya kong makita kay muli. Hello, you lit. Magandang umaga. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. And anybody who is coming from the Netherlands, I will say hello. It's Dankya for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. I appreciate you guys very much. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we start off with D4. We got D5, C4, and then we have C6. So, Ronaldo, we have the Slav defense. That was the funny thing I was talking about. Ronaldo is going to get it, man. Some of you guys might be wondering who Ronaldo is. Just look in the comments. He's down there. Anyways, this is your Slav, man. So let's go. Let's see what's going on. Knight comes to F3. We have knight to F6. And then we have E3. We got A6. Bishop comes to D3. We see bishop to G4. Knight B to D2. We're wanting to replace this knight with another knight if the bishop does decide to take. And then we have E6. Something I actually want to mention, though, if I back up to after we saw A6. Usually when you see A6, now you guys always hear about like making different pawn moves and stuff like that to give your king luft. There's a slight difference between moving a pawn on this side of the board where your king is going to be castled to create luft for your king, and moving a pawn on this side of the board. Because sometimes it might seem like it might be doing something, but it's not really doing very much. And so I say that because I say this. A6 in this particular position doesn't really achieve anything. Now, the main reason that you play A6 in a Slav or a similar type of setup to this is doing something like this. After you see A6, and then bishop does come to D3. Normally you see the pawn taking on C4, and then bishop takes C4, and then B5 comes, and your A6 is a preparatory move for B5. So if B5 never really comes, you almost kind of wasted the move A6. Like you kind of made it for no reason. So that's a little bit, of what happened in the game. The bishop would come back to D3. So almost all the time when you see an A6 in a Slav, it is actually called, I believe, like a chameleon. And you are just prepping B5 with A6, and you're going to be pushing this pawn to B5 and B4 type situation. So I was actually a little bit surprised when I didn't see B5 played in this game. So getting back to where we had, like I said, we did see E6 and then castles. Knight B came to D7. We saw queen to C2. And I mean, I'm not in Wesley So's head, so I'm not sure why he didn't play B5 because it's almost always a pawn takes and then allowing the bishop to take back, wasting the tempo almost, and then B5 comes and it just backs the bishop up, gives you some space. It's kind of similar when you play the Sicilian. We do see bishop to D6. And we have b3. Queen comes to e7. We see bishop to b2. And then we do have the novelty of the game, which is g6. And I mean, this move is it's fairly legit, but I mean, white is definitely in the driver's seat of this game. They have a lot of different options. I mean, they have e4s, they have rook f to e1, and that is what Anish Giri decided to play in this game, rook f to e1. Now, some of you guys might be wondering about this particular move, and like for anybody who has pretty much played against a rook to e1 move, when it kind of seems like it doesn't put it on any type of an open file, like the obvious threat is e4. You're threatening e4 could have already been played, but you're threatening e4 because you know, you just want to break the position open. Black is not castled, so that's something you're thinking about. And then also, if you can achieve it, you actually have a fork coming up here, so it's a very real threat. So a lot of the times when you see d4s, e4 is almost always going to come. So rook f to e1 just prepares that, if it really needs to be prepared at all. Sometimes you can just throw it out. Like in this position, e4 was definitely one of the moves that was possible. But rook f came to e1. We saw castles by black just literally getting out of the way. We saw knight to e5. Bishop came back to f5. Knight took on d7. Queen took on d7. And now we have the e4 push. You know, if you're not careful, you know, this pawn is going to be coming to e5 and you're getting forked. So you're pretty much forced to trade here. Pawn takes e4. Knight takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4. And then you do have queen to c7. Because Wesley was thinking, hey, man, why not threaten this pawn over here? Because, I mean, why not? You can win a pawn if, you know, white falls asleep. And as crazy as it sounds, that is a very real threat of the position. But the top suggested move in the position is actually bishop to f3. And you're thinking like, wait a minute, what? Like, so you're just going to give away the pawn? Crazy thing is, I mean, giving away the pawn isn't bad. You have bishop takes, king comes over to f1. And, you know, your bishop is actually like in the process of being trapped. Your knight is just a little bit loose once d5 is pushed. So you actually have like a lot of threats going on in the position here. So it's actually not bad to give that pawn up. But after queen to c7, we do see g3. And one of the positive things I can definitely say about this move is the fact that black does not have a light squared bishop. So you are definitely not worried about all of these light square, you know, holes that you have in your position. And also you still have your light square bishop. For the moment, I mean, the knight can always just take it off the board, but you're not worried about these light square weaknesses that you're creating. Knight does take e4. You got rook taking e4, bishop back to e7. You see rook over to d1, rook a to d8. So we're just pretty much all focused on this d file right now. And I mean, I accidentally went forward. So I was supposed to stop. Come on, man. Come on, son. Let's go. Thank you, Lord. I don't know how far I have to put my computer back. I'm going to get that right at some point in life. Yeah, so I was supposed to stop here. So I won't have a guess the move for this game because I was supposed to stop the move after rook a to d8 and have you guys guess and see if you can guess h4. One of the things I'll say about that move is the fact that, you know, you definitely want to be very careful pushing pawns when you're in the opening. Because pushing pawns does not help your development. It does not help your king be in get into safety. And so it usually just wastes tempo. And so you have to have a really good reason as to why you're just pushing, like, you know, wing pawns or just pushing pawns just multiple times in general. But h4 is a very legitimate threat. Like I said, you're not worried about all these light square weaknesses. The king can always come up to g2. So you're not worried about the queen infiltrating. And this dark square bishop is not going to do anything to like tear down this structure. But what you're hoping to do is push h5 and either encourage black to take, which is like a nightmare. And I'll show you that, or to take yourself and just try to break down the structure around the king as much as you can. And definitely try to create an open file over here. So bishop came to f6. So we're just loading up pressure on this d4 square. And we see h5. Rook comes to d7. We see king to g2. After rook f came to d8, we saw pawn takes g6, pawn takes g6. Now, if we actually backed up to where h5 was initially played, it is like pretty nasty to actually take here. It's not the end of the world, but it does open your king up quite a bit. And after queen comes to e2, you are threatening this pawn. You're threatening to move this rook onto a dark square, you know, or a light square, you know, after you take the pawn here. The king is going to come up, the rook is going to swing over, and you have a lot of play on this file here. And you definitely have bishop to c1 threatening bishop to h6 type stuff coming up. So you definitely have some weaknesses around your king that you have to be worried about. But like I said, we did see rook f to d7, pawn took g6, pawn took g6. We see rook over to h1. Bishop takes on d4, which is actually, it was suggested to go rook to h1. So this is not really a pawn sacrifice. You are going to be getting it back. Queen comes to d2. Queen takes on b2, queen takes on b2, and there's a checkmate in the position. So you really have to kind of be careful, because if you do nothing, the rook is going to come up here, and then that's just going to like seal the entire game, and that's all she wrote, and we're shaking hands and going home. So we have to play e5. f6 is by far not an option. I mean, the queen was just going to be taken here, and you are getting mated. Just how, like, you know, just pick a mate, right? So you have to go e5, and then the rook is just going to take that. So now we've just evened our pawns back up, and everything is everything. The rook comes down to d4. We see queen over to e2, and this has a slight threat involved in it. Pretty much what we see in the game. We actually see c5 in the game. We see rook to e8 with check, and there are two moves in the position ever. One is saving the game and making sure that it's still like draw worthy. The other one is just like 1000% losing, which is rook takes e8. And then after queen takes e8 with check, king comes down to g7, and this is checkmate. That box I was talking about. So we definitely can do that. So we actually see king to g7 in the position. Rook takes on d8. We see rook takes d8. We see queen to e3. Queen comes down to c6. We got f3. Queen comes down to f6. Queen goes to h6 with check. King comes up to g8. We see queen to h7 with check. King comes to f8. We see queen taking queen on h8 with check. And this is forcing the trade, because if you step down here, you're looking at the very nasty rook to e1 check. You definitely don't want that. So you have to be very careful when you put your king next to your queen and there are multiple pieces around, because sometimes you can get your king deflected away from the defense of your queen. So we do see queen taking h8, rook takes h8, king goes to e7, rook takes d8, king takes d8, king to f2, king to e7. And it is actually in this position that the players agree to a draw. And it's basically because, I mean, everything is drawn. I mean, you know, for white, there's king to e3, and you're just going to oppose each other. You know, the pawn structure is going to become locked up. Pretty much both sides have a lot of reserve tempo that they could just basically make it to where, you know, they're just going to always just have the king from the other side cut off. So, for example, like f5 can come, you know, you'll see f4. And, I mean, the problem with this one is the fact that, like, I mean, basically these kings can never try to penetrate. I mean, the center of the board is impassable for both kings. And you're always going to oppose the king if he tries to come around to get to this square. You're always going to be able to, like, kind of, like, hang around this area. So that's just one of many different options that you have to draw the position. As you can see, the pawn structure is completely equal. So it wasn't the craziest exciting game, but I was hoping to make sure that I stopped the video before h4, because it's just something like a nice idea. A lot of the times you guys know when you're playing against like a modern or a Pierce, or maybe like a Dragon Sicilian or something. I mean, you can definitely get your pawns rolling, and this is a very like legitimate idea behind trying to break down this structure. And a lot of times you'll have like a dark square bishop somewhere on this diagonal, and you'll have the queen on c1 so that you can trade off that dark square bishop and try to infiltrate with your queen. So there's a lot of different like kind of different ideas that kind of blend in for that. But that is that game. So I appreciate you guys very much for coming by. I will go ahead and do these good mornings for all my people in the Philippines, because you know I got so much love for y'all. So maanyong buntag, mayad na agahan, nainbag na bigat, masanto siya kabason, marhen na aga, buenos dias, maanyong aga, mapian na uma, kapian kapuno dios, mayad na aga, mapia agay, mapia kapapita, my big abukla, Marjana buntag, Maria might not, Maupena aga, Kasanyangan CLB. And I hope I said those correctly. I felt like I was messing up there. I might have been, but you know, you guys know I get them all the time. So I appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat aking kaibigan, coming from the Philippines. Thank you guys very much. So it looked like Malakas C. Anish Giri at Wesley. So, and that is that. Makito tayo mamaya. And I will see you guys next time. Appreciate it.